Actually, I think we're reaching, I identified that there's a dividing line, and it's not simply south and north either. Let me take Northern Ireland first. Yeah, of course, the Northern Ireland's preference for rules, because in a way that sort of dampens conflict, has probably served it well over the last 10 years. We've now got the policing through. Now, I predict that at some point the rules will become inappropriate. Society will move on, political debate will move on, the rules won't, and there will come a conflict. And because of the difficulty of changing that kind of, quote, constitution, I just simply hope that by the time we get to that point, as with the antibodies against violence will be sufficiently strong, they will find a solution through civil society. So it's probably necessary for now, but I think the seeds of tension 10 or 20 years from now, I'm just hoping it'll work out. As for the other three, I think they all sort of in a way come together. Peter McGregor, who worked with my first wife, should I call you Victor Meldrew?
I don't think so.
The one bit of fiction, much as I should say as an ex-journalist, the one bit of deliberate fiction I wrote was for the Sunday Times magazine a few months ago. And it was, I imagined a man living his life in reverse, being born now, and or in a few years' time, and as we're being in his 60s in the 1950s. And the sort of conceit is, people of our sort of age instinctively complain about how much better things were when we were growing up. And I think if you grew up now and reached old age of the 1950s, you'd have real cause to complain. Because the 1950s, Britain, England, London, was, the shops closed on Wednesday afternoon, Saturday afternoon, on Sunday. The fine buildings, the churches, were all sort of grey, they hadn't been cleaned up since the war. Food, restaurants were dreadful. You couldn't get decent coffee. However you looked at however you looked at it in sort of cultural terms, the opportunities for working class kids were far smaller than they are now. All this crap about grammar schools. There was a very few working class kids, real working class kids, escaped through the sort of grammar school system. So I say yes. I'm an optimist. I think things broadly get better. Are they perfect? No. Of course, Oxford should have 80% and not 50% of kids from state schools. Of course, people with wealth and status fight tenaciously to ensure that they pass on that privilege to their kids. It always was over us in every country in the world and will remain so. And part of the job of government is to make it harder for that instinctive thing to happen. Yes, I'm not a Scottish melancholic. I'm an English optimist. And come on to Cameron's Britain. Fortunately, this ties in also with Peter's point. Fortunately, governments have much less effect than they, or indeed the voters at the time, think. The big things that tend to happen despite governments rather than because of them. So I think things will continue to improve through 5 years of Cameron rule, if that's what we get, irrespective of what he does. He will then claim in 2015 that Britain is no longer broken. And he will be right to say in 2015 Britain is not broken. He's wrong to say now that it is broken.
Well, Dr. Pangos. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Can I just ask a question that follows on from that, because it seems to be, from what we see, that you're an optimist or pessimist by your personality and upbringing, whether in Scotland or England or whatever it is. But surely it's optimistic for some people and pessimistic for others, and one of the things that at last people are addressing is the growing inequalities in society, which have been growing under this Labour government, as there have been not more than there have been at any other time. And I would have thought that's a disturbing thing, because that, and combined with the huge economic crisis that we're living through, where we're having to cut public sectors by 18 or 24%, which is going to affect a lot of people, and it suggests that people are going to get more unequal rather than any improvements.
Can I respond to that? I can just before add on what I wanted to say before, but it depends. It relates to your first point. Yes, in many ways things are better for some people, not for others. Though there are things which have, I think, universal application. My current wife, not the one who worked with Peter 30 years ago, is the European Union's High Representative. Now, had I, as a kid growing up in the 50s, been told that I, the son of a Jewish refugee from Vienna, and as well as a Scottish mother, was going one day to marry somebody who would become the representative of a democratic and united Europe, with the blessing of the female leader of a united and democratic Germany, I would have said, perhaps even 25 years ago, had that been predicted, that would be cloud cuckoo land. You know, we mustn't forget some really big things that are not just about individuals. I think one of the sadnesses about the European debate is it gets sort of sucked into sort of anti-Brussels stuff, and we ignore some really phenomenal things that have happened in the space of 2 generations, or even 1 generation. As you pointed about equality, I sort of half agree. Oddly enough, I think one of the great achievements of this government is that it has stopped inequality becoming wider than it has. The forces in an open global economy are vicious to increasing inequality. And I think through various things, through the tax system, through minimum wage and so on, the fact that this has only grown a bit, and I don't think it's grown hugely since I said, I think it has grown a bit, but I think that it's only grown a bit, I think is a colossal achievement. But the point I think, and this is I think that's the next challenge for those of us on the progressive side of politics, is that since I don't think it's a realistic option to cut Britain off from the global economy, and therefore the forces at work in terms of pay and in terms of taxation and so on, because we're no longer really truly sovereign on these issues, no modern country is that we've got to, as it were, change the objective. I think the objective should be to make wealth and income inequality less important. In other words, that through, whether it's social benefits, through health, through education, through being able to step outside your front door and not to be mugged, to breathe clean air, to have public spaces, to have accessible transport, good affordable foods and banking nearby. I think I don't think realistically we can radically close the wealth and income gap. Therefore, I think the objective should be to make it matter much less, and this includes Oxford entry criteria, to make it matter much less what the income and wealth position is of kids and their families as they grow up.